Hey folks, Dust here, and kind of a tradition on this channel has always been that before I go to a LAN event, I do some type of pre-LAN vlog just to kind of discuss my feelings, thoughts, discuss the LAN itself, and basically just kind of give you some insight and just, like I said, just kind of share my thoughts basically about going to a LAN. And it's been, I guess, a decent while since I've been to one. I think about like 3 or 4 months or something like that. The last LAN I went to was the last CEVO LAN, the Season 6 LAN. We had like 4 North American teams, even though one of them was kind of a mixed team. So much smaller scale than this event, which is big. I think it's a $75,000 prize pool for the actual prize pool, and then obviously all the travel support that we've given to teams to get them to the venue and get them a hotel and all that good stuff as well. So I think in total is $125,000 worth of prize money as well as travel and support and things like that. So much bigger scale. We got some EU teams joining us this time, with Virtus Pro and Navi, obviously two, top 5 teams in the world basically going to make it. I guess it's arguable where VP ranks now, but I think they're still at least near the top 5, and Navi obviously like probably number 3 or something like that, maybe even trying to push into number 2 territory soon, depending on how their upcoming tournaments go. So 2 of those teams, obviously, we got Cloud9 on the rise, so they're going to be there. They're in the top 10 now, maybe more towards 7th or 6th or something like that. So they're really picking up traction. They're really doing great things. Then you have Mouse Sports, who we've only seen play one LAN coming into this, but they actually had some surprising results against Virtus Pro. I believe that was at I want to say it was one of the Gfinity events. If I'm not mistaken, it might have been that Gfinity Summer event where they had those 2 best-of-3 wins against Virtus Pro. Gfinity Summer 1. So, definitely going to be interesting to see if they can kind of carry that form. Can they get some more impressive results? So, 3 really solid European teams as well as, like I said, Cloud9. Then you have Liquid, who's still trying to prove themselves. And then we had, of course, LG with their roster change, bringing in Devilwalk as an in-game leader. So far, I've only seen them at ESWC and a couple of online games for, like, RGN. So we haven't seen a lot out of them either. So we get to learn a bit more about them. And then we have Tempo Storm. That's a new North American team, new roster. We get to see them in action for the first time, basically, because they've actually played maybe like 1 or so RGN online match since they got the 5 they have now. And then, of course, you have CLG, but unfortunately they're coming with a stand-in finesse visa issues, apparently. So they're using Cutler as a caller and bringing in Sangsington to kind of fill in a role there. And then, of course, we are going to... I think that pretty much wraps up all the teams, actually, so I guess I'll just kind of leave it at that. Unfortunately, we didn't have Nip and Envy show up. It would have been cool to see Envy for the first time at our event. We certainly were hoping that was going to happen. For a while, it looked like it would, but then kind of last minute, they had to kind of pull out for whatever reason, and then Nip also deciding to pull out as well. So that's definitely unfortunate we lost those 2 teams, but still 3 really good European teams going to be there, at least from what we've seen in recent form. And then, like I said, Cloud9 making this rise. So, I guess 4 top 10 teams at the event, plus some... 4 kind of like North American teams that are, trying to make a name for themselves, I guess you could say. And that's pretty much the event. Now, basically, I just wanted to start off first in this vlog after kind of introducing the teams and things like that, just to say I really definitely am thankful for CEVO and MLG to give me this opportunity to cast a big LAN. This is the biggest LAN I've ever casted in my career. I've been casting Counter-Strike Source as a hobby since like 2007, 2008, and it wasn't until 2012, after doing it for a hobby for 4 or 5 years when there was very little money in esports at the time, to actually being able to get some type of part-time job back in 2012. That was, of course, with ESCA, and I worked with them for about 2 years. And I went to, some pretty decent-sized ESCA LANs, and those were kind of my first attempts. And I've said this repeatedly. I've always been thankful to ESCA for giving me those initial opportunities that I would probably normally have never gotten otherwise, and giving me my first paid gigs and commentating Counter-Strike. So definitely cool stuff. But this will definitely be the biggest LAN I've been to as far as prize money goes, and as far as the caliber of the teams. Unfortunately, it's not as high as we wanted, but we still have some really great teams that are going to be there, so it's going to be really cool stuff. Definitely, like I said, thankful to MLG, people like Adam Apicella and Ryan Thompson and Spencer Peterson, those guys, I guess kind of some of the guys in charge that decided that they would bring me as well as all the other CEVO, or a lot of other CEVO casters at least, to the event. Definitely, appreciate that. Cool stuff. Also, I'm glad I'm going to get to meet some of the other MLG guys again. Obviously, working with Puckett in the talent department, but also, seeing like Brian and some of these different producers that they have. Paul, who works with the talent pretty closely, and just, whoever else I might meet. I'm not even really sure. Like I said, I already mentioned Adam and Ryan, but definitely thank you guys for bringing me along, and definitely, can't wait to see you again after hanging out with you at the last event. Obviously, like I said, big thanks to CEVO, especially people like Charlie Plitt and Chris Pfeiffer, who are kind of, the head honchos, so to speak, as well as Dima, who is like in charge of all the talent over at CEVO. Big shout out to those guys for giving me opportunities like this one. And also a big shout out to all the co-casters I've worked with throughout the season, many of whom will be there with me, such as Patrick Flanagan, such as Joey, him as Helium Umbrella, or Luca, him as Misled. They're going to be there. Launders is going to be there as well. And then, of course, me being there. And then we also will be having Henry G joining us, who, obviously has been phenomenal. He's been one of my favorite color commentators, actually, out of, all the stuff that I've watched, between watching him, obviously, just very recently at Face It Stage 2 at DreamHack Valencia, but he's also done some Gfinity stuff in the past. I think Gfinity 3, that was probably like last year. That was one of the first times I actually saw him. And, it's going to be cool to see him at our event and get to work with him in some capacity. I'm not sure. And then, of course, we got Sir Scoots hosting the desk, and that's going to be really cool. I've interviewed Sir Scoots. I've talked with him before. I've never met him before, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. And then, obviously, Duncan Thorin Shields, one of the best analysts in CSGO, if not the best. His work has been a huge influence on me. I've learned a lot from his work, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's been something that I've kind of looked up to, and even tried to kind of do some of my own stuff that's similar, like vlogs and doing analysis bits and things like that. So he's definitely someone I look up to in that regard, and it'll be cool to meet him. Never met him before, never even really spoken with him very much. We've shared each other's work, and we kind of support each other to a degree in that regard, but haven't had much conversation with him, so it'll be cool to meet him. And then obviously Hiko's going to be there, which will be cool. Like, his team didn't make it to the event, but he's definitely a really knowledgeable dude, and it'll be cool to have him on the desk. So a lot of talented people that I get to work with. Obviously, we have some of our producers that are going to be there as well, like Alex, Kurt, who is been our cameraman, our observer for a lot of online stuff. He's going to be doing camera work at this event as well. And I mean, there's just so many other people from CEVO, like Spangler and some of these other admins like Howard Dean, Matt, just Mike Stevens, just so many different people. I know I'm going to miss somebody, and someone at CEVO or MLG is going to be really pissed off I didn't mention their name in this video, but there's just so many people that, I've got to work with over the past few months with working with MLG and CEVO that have just been great people to work with. Very, like I said, thankful for the opportunities that they've given me, thankful for working with me and helping me grow and learn along the way. So definitely really cool stuff. So that was just kind of me giving shout outs and just naming some names of people who have been really cool in the industry and have been a big help to me. Like I said, this vlog's kind of more personal than just, objectively looking at games and things like that. So this is a little bit different flavor of a vlog, I guess you could say. So that's the kind of the shout outs and thanks, and glad I get to meet all these people. Obviously, getting to meet all the players is going to be cool too. A lot of North American guys that I hang out with and talk to online all the time that I've seen at events in the past. I get to see them again, so it's kind of like a reunion almost when you go to these LANs. Besides just the competition and the awesome matches and being able to cast, which is so fun. It's also really cool to just kind of meet up with these people that you get to see occasionally. Like I said, it's been 4 or 5 months since I've been to a LAN, so it's been a while, and it's just really cool to meet up with friends of mine as well as meet new people and things like that. So really, really cool stuff. Now, also, I'm going to have a heart-to-heart really quick with the community in the video right now as well, because with this being the biggest CSGO LAN that I've ever attended, it also might be, depending on how things go, one of my last. I did graduate college in May, so that was 2 months ago that I graduated from college with my master's degree. Ever since then, I've been kind of job hunting. I have been casting a lot for CEVO. That's kind of been my full-time job. Actually, I've been actively pursuing kind of a full-time gig, doing commentary and just doing any type of streaming or esports-related work, or even some journalism. I even wrote some articles for iBuyPower for a tournament that they had, in the NA scene. So for the last 2 months I've been, well, I guess really this whole year, because like even when I was still in school, I was still casting 4 nights a week, and on top of that, just keeping up with my research to make sure that my knowledge was up to snuff and all that good stuff. And so, I've been actively pursuing that for a while, but depending on how this event goes depends on whether or not I get to continue that story, or whether or not I have to kind of move to casting once again, kind of being either just a small part-time thing or just kind of a hobby I do occasionally. A lot really does ride on this event for me in such a huge way. I need this event to kind of be like a launching point for like future gigs and future work in the industry, basically. And I can only hope that that will happen. I actually have no control over that other than like how well prepared I am and how well I perform. That's all on me. But as far as how people take it, as far as how people see it, whether they see it as good or bad or what have you, that's a little bit out of my hands. Like I don't know if people will like it or not. I just have to do my best and hope that it gets me somewhere, right? I can tell you that I have just done more preparation for this event alone than I've done at any other point. I mean, I'm always pretty like well-rounded in knowledge. Like I'm usually always like, following the teams and their matches, especially in the NA scene, since I pretty much cast NA matches all the time. I'm always, watching their matches and all the different leagues they play in, as well as casting their games and talking to the players and looking at stats, looking at results, looking at demos, all of that. I try to, stay pretty, up to snuff, like I said. But for this event especially, I've really just gone all out. Every day for the last 3 or 4 months for me has been pretty much the same daily routine, which is, spend the time during the day either watching live matches from Europe or watching VODs from matches in Europe. Or obviously on the weekends I've watched like all the LANs that have happened over the past couple of months, knowing that my LAN was coming up soon. Which I mean, I usually always watch the big LANs anyhow, but I really like put extra emphasis on that. Compiling stats and results and analyzing those and trying to come up with cool storylines from them. Same with just all the individual players from these teams as well, not just the teams but the players as well. I've watched so many demos over the past few months. Like I said, every day is me either watching match VODs or live matches or watching a bunch of demos for several hours. For all besides, I guess for this event, I didn't really get to watch much for Tempo Storm or Luminosity because they're like brand new teams and they haven't really played much since, so I haven't really been able to follow them. But as far as the other 6 teams at this event, I've watched them play every map at least 2 or 3 times and like learning how they play the map, what are their general strategy for each map, like what type of style do they have, what type of like tactics do they have that they use to kind of implement that style that they like to play. So it's like general tendencies and trends. Like I've really tracked that out a lot. I've probably watched like somewhere definitely over 60 demos, but maybe even more than that over the past couple of months. I really, granted, when I say that I haven't watched every single round all the way through, typically I'll skip like a lot of eco rounds or a lot of like second and third rounds of the half and just kind of focus on gun rounds a lot. But still, I've just been spending hours and hours a day, over the past 3 months prepping for this. And then at night I'm casting NA games like some of these teams that are going to the event. So definitely spending 6-8 hours a day between doing casting work and doing like prep work for this LAN and keeping my knowledge up to snuff. So I can tell you that I'm definitely well prepared. I've definitely prepared as hard as I can. The knowledge will be there, but it's all about how I present it too, right? And if you guys like the way that I present it, and so that's something else I have to work on and hope that goes well. I've really put my all into this. I mean, I've been putting my all into this ever since 2012 when I finally got some type of gig in it. But for this event, I know this is kind of like my big chance and kind of one of my last chances to make something happen of myself in the casting world. And I've really done all that I can, and so hopefully you folks enjoy it. I can say that a lot of the other commentators that are going to this event are also quite well prepared. I know I've been collaborating with some of the other CEVO casters like Pat Flanagan and Joey specifically, Helium Umbrella. We've really been like working together and sharing notes and talking things through with our notes, see if we're noticing the same things. Bringing things to each other's attention. So I'm not the only person that's prepping a lot. I'm sure, all the other guys there that I haven't talked to, I'm sure they're also doing their prep work as well, right? So I can tell you that I just know I saw the general reaction from the community when they didn't see as many big names as maybe they wanted, that they're used to seeing at all these other LAN events. I mean, obviously we have Henry G and Thorin and Sir Scoots and Hiko, who are, pretty big names. And I guess Launders has started to make a big name for himself on YouTube, or he has been doing so for quite some time now, as well as his personal stream. But kind of the rest of us, unless you've been watching like MLG and CEVO regular season stuff, you probably have never heard of us before. In fact, I'm maybe if you're just watching this vlog and you've maybe never seen us cast before and you're just wanting to hear about this LAN, because obviously we're going to be having like a lot of new eyes coming on to us for this event because of all like the quality of the teams and the prize money and the quality of the tournament itself. So definitely, what I can tell you is that, we're all hungry to try to prove that we can be just as good as some of these other guys out there that you adore. And, especially me, like I said, this has always been a dream of mine that I've been very passionate about for a long time. And, like I said, I know this is kind of one of my last chances to make it work before I have to start, looking for career options so I can pay the big boy bills and bear the big responsibilities I have now. So with that said, basically what I'm saying is like, if you enjoy my work and you like the casting I do this event, or you just like my work in general, definitely let these people know, like let CEVO and MLG know that you're liking my casting and liking my work, because it directly translates to what I get to do in the future. Like even throughout the event, if I'm casting day one and I'm doing well and you're liking it, and people are being verbal about liking it, then that means that they'll notice. Like, I mean, the MLG and CEVO, they pay attention to like the social media and all this stuff, and like if they see a really positive response in the community about a particular caster or something, then they're obviously gonna be more prone to use that caster for future matches, like on day 2 and 3. So your reaction, your response, like people always say they want their voices to be heard, or they want people to listen to the community. These people do. So whoever you like, whoever you're really vibing, or you feel is doing a great job, if you let CEVO and MLG know that, either tweeting them directly or posting on Reddit about it, or tweeting, just whatever, they pay attention to that. Maybe not a direct tweet to the caster, they probably don't see that unless like you tag CEVO and MLG in it, but they pay attention. So what I'm saying is, it's like they do listen to the community. So if you depending on what you say about certain casters, actually depends on who they use going forward. So you do get to have a voice in this. You do get to kind of see what you want, basically. You do have a profound influence in that, right? You are empowered in that, right? Not only just from a casting perspective, but from a production perspective. If you like certain things that we're doing, or if there's certain things we're not doing that you'd like to see, there's some limitations to that, obviously. Like I know a lot of people want player POV streams, for example, but we're not doing that at basically requests of the teams who feel it's a bit unfair. Which I believe is correct. And some of those things, like there are limitations, but obviously we listen to criticism. We will try to fix the things that you say you're not quite liking, or we'll try to continue and build upon the things that you are liking. So I guess what I'm going to say is this, is like, I'm not begging for you to vote for me. Like this is not like some type of campaign video to say, hey, please, when you see me casting, let these people know you love me so I can cast more. I'm just saying, tell the truth. Like, because here's the thing, the haters are going to hate, right? Like all the people that want to be negative and troll and hate, you don't have to encourage them to be vocal. I don't even have to tell them to go like be honest and say what they think about me. Like they are going to. Like I don't have to call those people out, but I feel like there's a lot of people out there who seem to like my work, at least from what I can tell, because they'll private message me on like Facebook, or they'll send me an email or PM me on Reddit, or tweet at me directly or what have you. And I appreciate that to the fullest. Like it's so refreshing to get to see some positive messages from the community at times, especially when I see so much hate on different forums and sometimes on the Reddit, and I get even tweeted really mean things directly to me all the time, which that's everyone. Like you have to have thick skin in this community, whether you're a player or a coach or manager or a personality or what have you in the scene. And like I said, so it's really cool to see positive stuff, but unfortunately, if I'm the only one who sees it and not these hiring companies or the people I'm working with, they don't see it, then it doesn't necessarily help me, get future stuff. So what I'm just saying is don't lie. If you don't like my work, you don't have to say that you do, but just be vocal either way. Let your voice be heard either way about anyone at this event, because it does help them out so very much. And I'm sure, the other casters as well would appreciate, hearing positive things from you as well if you're liking what they're doing. And I'm sure, just like me, I'm saying for me, I would appreciate any constructive criticism as well. Like, obviously, I don't want to hear destructive stuff like "go kill yourself" or like "you fucking blow," like "please leave forever." Like, I hear those things sometimes. But if you say, "Hey, like, I really don't like that you're doing this. Like, this is a bad habit that you have," or something to that degree, like something constructive, basically, like actually saying, "Hey, I'd like you to fix this," rather than saying you suck. I would appreciate that too, just as much as the positive stuff that you say, just because it helps me get better. It helps me know what to work on. I trust a lot in my co-casters and staff to really kind of coach me, but it also sometimes the community can provide some cool constructive stuff as well. And I'm sure a lot of the other casters at this event would feel pretty much the same way, especially a lot of the CEVO guys, for them, a lot of these guys, this is their biggest event of their career too. So, really, really important stuff on that regard. So that's just been more personal stuff. And I just hope that, like I said, just to wrap the personal stuff up, just thanks MLG, CEVO, for bringing me on. It's great to see all these guys again. Great to see all the players and teams again. Thanks to the community who have been supporting me throughout all this. Like I said, if you're enjoying my work at this event or any caster for that matter, definitely, just let those people know, because it does really influence, what else we get to do. As well as the criticism, we definitely appreciate that as well. From a caster perspective to improve our individual work, but from an event perspective as well to try to make the event the best that it can be. And I think that's the TLDR version of pretty much everything I said from this point prior. So yeah, from this point forward, talk a little bit. It is best of 3 GSL group stuff, so awesome, like best format possible, right? We have a best of 5 grand finals with the best of 3 bracket as well once we get to playoffs. So once again, pretty much the best format you can have. Really, really excited about that, for the format purposes. When you look at the groups, for Group A, it's Cloud9, Mouse Sports, Liquid, and CLG. For Group B, it's VP, Navi, Luminosity, and Tempo Storm. We're running 2 streams all day or all evening Friday, starting at, I believe, 5 p.m. Either Central Time or Eastern Time. I'm not really sure on that. That's my bad. Sorry. And essentially, we start in the evening time with the Group B matches. We're running 2 streams, as I said. So on one stream, it'll be Luminosity versus Navi. And then on one stream, it'll be VP versus Tempo Storm. And then Group A, C9 versus CLG, and then Mouse Sports versus Liquid. That's all on the first day. We're really used to schedule, by the way, so I'm not going to get too crazy into this. And then Saturday, we'll have 2 streams in the morning and afternoon up until we consolidate like the elimination matches for Group B and A, which starts in the late afternoon on Saturday, and then we'll be at 1 stream going forward for those 2 elimination matches, and then the 2 semifinals, and then the grand finals, of course, which will the 2 semifinals and the grand finals will actually be on Sunday morning and afternoon. So really cool stuff. Just thinking about the teams that are going to be there real quick. Cloud9 really been on their rise. They've been to the finals of the last 3 events they've attended, so 3 second places in a row. This is such a huge turnaround. We saw them at Gfinity Spring 2, their first event with this current 5, where things didn't go very well. Gfinity Summer 1 started to see a little bit of something. They actually got like a map win against Envy in a best of 3 and pushed it all 3 maps, and even had a close cash loss to Envy there, but then got kind of O2'd by VP. But then, just all of a sudden after that Gfinity Summer 1 event, they just come out flying at the ESL ESEA Season 1 Finals, 2-0ing Envy, beating Envy in group play once, losing to VP again, but then being able to 2-0 Envy later on, then 2-0 their North American rival CG, and then have a pretty tight grand finals against Fnatic in a best of 5 series where they did take the first map, Cobble, in a surprising fashion. Kind of got blasted on cash, but then had some really close games in Overpass and D2. Really almost seemed like it could go either way. Really close to their first title right there. That's a huge turnaround, but just in a week's difference of time between Gfinity Summer 1 and ESL, where they just made like this huge increase in play. And then they've maintained that form since then. Making the finals again at VSWC 2015 by, getting past teams like Keed and Flip in groups, beating their NA rivals Liquid, beating Envy again. Of course, Envy was kind of dead at this point, I guess, so this particular win against Envy doesn't hold as much weight, I guess, as the map win at Gfinity Summer and the win at ESL. But still, cool stuff, and then playing Navi in a pretty tight grand finals at the end. And then DreamHack Valencia beating Navi, getting some revenge there, beating Kingwin, 2-0ing Fnatic. That was huge, especially with that win on Mirage. I mean, that was just insane to see that happen. And then having that really, crazy overtime game, double overtime game on Train that they were able to get. And then they kind of got blasted in the finals. They had a close cash game, but that Mirage game was, kind of just a blast. And so they still showed some really good stuff, though, with these past three finals. Like, part of this is just the roles are so much well-defined on this team. Having Freak be this dedicated entry fragger, no fear, doing what he's told. Sean Gares being the firm leader of the team, being able to say no to suggestions, being able to filter suggestions better, but being the firm leader, not letting people call over him. He's brilliant with his tactics, brilliant on how he anti-strats and scouts teams. Such a phenomenal in-game leader, for the scene and for this team. Having his longest streak of good form in his CSGO career, because all the other roles are so well defined, he can kind of be that wild card, lurking a lot, but also being able to do some other things. And he's just been playing, lights out CS these last 3 or 4 events. He's really been good for the last couple of months, but we're really, really starting to see the evidence of that over these past 3 events or so, especially like like someone like ESWC in particular, and some of the DreamHack Valencia stuff. He was really good. Obviously, you got Skadoodle, just best opera in NA for sure, and probably a top 3 opera in the world at this point. His run of form has been insane. In the past when he was playing with iBuyPower, there were instances overseas where he wasn't really showing us very much. I mean, he had that Gfinity 3 event where he was quite good, but pretty much all the majors he played in for iBuyPower, they were a bit lackluster. And even some of the other lands he played on NA soil, he wasn't nearly as explosive as what we would see like online. But ever since he got on this team, he's been phenomenal. So like when you have someone opting that well for you, that just gives you so much on both sides of the map, and he's been great. And then obviously Shroud, he's shown potential for the longest time, ever since he even joined Cloud9. So in the first events for them, he looked quite good. Seemed to kind of dip off a bit or be quite inconsistent. I would still say, like, you let this guy play 10 games. 7 of those games he's going to be quite good, or like 6 of those games he's going to be like phenomenal. Then like 2 or 3 games he'll be pretty good, kind of average, and then like 1 game he'll be really off, right? But that's still pretty decent consistency. Super big fragger, getting more out of him on T side thanks to Sean Gares kind of realizing his skills, getting them second into the site, being able to make him an active part of T side more, where he used to be kind of more passive. So swapping the roles there and defining that well for Shroud with, like I said, Sean kind of lurking with nothing a bit, and Freak dedicated entry that allows Shroud to kind of be still that second or third guy in, and still being active on site takes much more so than the past. So that's more production out of him. And then like on CT side, he's great as well, just a sick rifler. So they really just do have a talented team. They've really figured things out, and this could be their title, their first one. We'll have to see. Liquid comes into this from the NA scene. They have some good players. Like Elise showed us a lot at ESWC. I think Fugly's been the best player for this team, though, as far as consistency goes. He's looked good almost every game I've seen him play for Liquid. This dates back months and months back, actually. But it seems like, sometimes Elise and Nitro are a bit off their game. This was especially the case at ESWC against Cloud9, where Adren was actually really stepping up fragging-wise, and Fugly, like I said, quite consistent. Flowsick, you kind of know what you're going to get with him as well, but Elise and Nitro actually played like a little bit underwhelming against Cloud9 at ESWC, which is the last LAN they played at. But they still have shown us a little bit of something, right? Except for against NIP. Like, they've just been getting blasted by NIP, if we're honest. But they've definitely still shown us a little bit of ESWC and how they played. And they had some maps off of Navi and NIP as well. Navi and Fnatic at Gfinity Spring, too. The only other LAN they've played with this 5 besides ESWC in the Face It Stage 2, where Face Stage 2 they didn't really show us much at all. Just getting kind of crushed by Fnatic, and then getting really, beat down by NIP in another series. So let's see what they can do. Can they show us a bit of something? I mean, they're in a group with Cloud9 and Mouse Sports and CLG, I think. There's definitely a chance they could come out of that group in second place. I can't see them beating Cloud9 and Mouse Sports. I guess I can't. I think Cloud9 and Mouse Sports probably make it out that group, right? But maybe Liquid can surprise us and try to, beat out Mouse Sports. We'll have to see. Luminosity, new roster with Devilwalk coming in as an in-game leader. Peter now just dedicating to straight opping. So some roles have changed. A new player has come in. We've only seen them play at ESWC since then. didn't quite go well for them. Like I said, some of their players I feel like haven't had a good LAN in a while, especially Anger. Pitt was actually showing us a bit of good things individually at ESWC at times, so it's good to see him fragging well. Maybe now that Peter doesn't have to worry about in-game leading, he can focus on opping and fragging and do better, hopefully. Like I said, Anger just needs to find his form. It's been quite some time since I've seen him have a really good LAN event. So hopefully he can start to find his form. Maybe Devilwalk can find a way to implement him better and get him comfortable. And they really need a lot out of Anger, I feel like, on this team. And we haven't seen him play much since they made this move. Let's see what they can do at this event. CLG, unfortunately, is coming in with a stand-in. Finesse couldn't make it, so they have Cutler calling and Sanctionton from Nylon coming into play. They've just been a really inconsistent team. Like, they'll have these crazy best-of-1 wins, like at ESL, ESEA, against Fnatic on Mirage and Keyed on Cash. You date back even, further than that. They've had, like, these best-of-1 wins, like at the last major, for example, against Hellraisers, but then lose out. You go even further back to the beginning of this year at Aspen, the big win against LDLC, so that they can get these crazy best-of-1 wins. Like, they can scout a team really well, know what map they're going to play on, like, understand the veto process. And like I said, scout very well. They do have some really skilled players like Tarek, very, very solid aimer and rifler. Cutler, very consistent rifler. JDM, when he's on form, his op can be quite powerful. One of the top ops in the NA scene outside of Skadoodle. If he's on his game, that's like the big thing, though, is like the if. And like I said, the consistency of this team overall just seems like really big highs, really big lows, though, as well. Like, every time you start to see some potential and get excited about them, something will happen that kind of brings them down a notch. Like I said, ESL, ESEA, they get these wins against Fnatic and Keyed Stars, but then they lose to C9, and then they go to ESWC, and they're unable to beat Envy or Renegades. Like, even with the big lead against Renegades on Cash, with 10 rounds, I think it was in the first half on T-side, they still couldn't close that game, so they don't make it out of groups. So like I said, crazy highs and crazy lows. Playing with the stand-in, it's going to be tough for them, but let's see if they can maybe show us a bit of something. Because obviously, all these North American teams that I've mentioned are all about to compete at an NA qualifier for the next major in Cologne. And I think 2 teams come out of that. I guess Cloud9 and Liquid are probably the 2 heavy favorites, but maybe like CLG, Luminosity, Nyla, maybe some of those teams can try to challenge. And so because we get to see a lot of NA teams at this event, it'll be a good preview for that qualifier that happens in a couple of weeks after this event's over. So keep that in mind. Now, to wrap this off, we have our 3 European teams. First off, we got Virtus Pro, who had a tough time at Face It Stage 2 going out in groups because of that loss to Kingwin. Obviously, we also know they struggled at Gfinity Summer 1 because of their losses to Mouse Sports. And so both those cases, they placed like 5th, 6th, or kind of got eliminated in group stages. So that's definitely some rough form lately. But early on this year, like way earlier on this year, they did have that title at ESEA, beating some really good teams to be able to do that, like Titan and Fnatic. Face It Stage 1, they had 3rd, 4th place. Gfinity Spring Masters 2, they made it to the finals and I think lost to Fnatic in a best of 5. So, I mean, they have shown us at times this year, but I guess the last couple of months have been a bit rougher. Though I would say, like, at the ESL, ESEA LAN that they played at right before they kind of went on break, so they didn't go to ESWC, they just had a tough time against Fnatic there. They still placed 3rd, 4th, so they can still play well. I know people like Pasha seem to have struggled a bit lately, so has Snacks, but Neo has really seen to step up his game. Bialy has been playing more or less about the same, and Taz plays about at the level that you'd always expect out of him. Like, he can have big moments, but you don't expect him to be your star. And I think they're still, especially in this situation where their biggest competition's Cloud9, who they have a crazy good head-to-head record against. Like, C9 actually have never beaten VP in all the head-to-head matches that they've played. So that's like the big North American team that they have to worry about, I guess you could say. And like I said, they haven't really had any struggles playing against them. Obviously, they had their struggles against Mouse Sports, though, at Gfinity Summer, so we have to see if they can overcome that this event if they play. And then their head-to-head record against Navi is kind of mixed, to be honest. Like, we've seen at times, VP be able to beat Navi. Like, they beat him at Gfinity Spring Masters 2 in a 2-0 series, though it was like really close overtimes and such like that. But they've lost to him most recently in a best of 1 at Face It Stage 2, as well as losing to them at the EPL winter event that Navi went on to win. So they have kind of a mixed head-to-head record. So I think VP, because like NIP and Envy and some of these teams aren't there, I think they actually have a good chance to make the final, like against Navi, especially if they get to play Cloud9 head-to-head, like in the bracket stage. They have a really good head-to-head record there. Seems like Cloud9 seems to not read them very well. Even in interviews, Cloud9 would say they'd rather play Fnatic than VP just because of the readability, I guess you could say. So yeah, really good chance to make the finals. I guess if they play Navi head-to-head in the semis, then maybe they won't make the final because Navi might, have the edge there. But definitely a team that could make the finals. Definitely expect them to at least place third or fourth or what have you. So yeah, we'll just have to see what VP can do. And then obviously Navi comes into this really hot, looking really sharp lately. They have won 3 titles this year so far. Between EPL winner, a Star Series event, and ESWC. They have placed top 3 at the last 6 events they've attended. So just amazing run of form lately. Guardian, best opera in the world, looking phenomenal. Flamey and C's really being big fraggers on that team as well. Really consistently, those 3 I've just named have been performing quite well, playing really, really well. And then Edward can occasionally have the big game too, but it's really those other 3 that have just been sick. They have some sick win rates on maps like Overpass, Mirage, and Cobble. Also known to be quite a good and Inferno team and can hold their own on Dust too. So they have a pretty solid map pool. They have a good run of form and results. They have some players, especially like Guardian, who are top in the world in their respective role. They're looking good. They have a pretty decent head-to-head record against everyone they're going to play at this event. Like, they had a 1-1 split with Liquid at Gfinity Spring, losing Overpass but winning Dust 2. I expect them to still be a favorite against Liquid if they play head-to-head. Obviously a favorite against Luminosity if they play head-to-head again. Already have that ESWC map, winning against them in groups. Against Virtus Pro, as I've said, they actually have it's like 3-3 for maps on LAN between these two teams, actually. But the losses that Navi had were like in overtime, whereas the wins they got were quite massive. And one of their losses against, VP were on Cash, which is a map that VP's known to be like their best map, and Navi doesn't play Cash hardly at all if they can avoid it. In fact, it's one of their popular vetoes. So I think head-to-head against VP, they're definitely going to be favored. Against Cloud9, once again, it is 2-2 map split right now between the ESWC Grand Finals and their group play match head-to-head at Face It Stage 2 at DreamHack Valencia. So that could actually be another tight series again. But Navi definitely a great chance to make the final and probably a favorite to win the tournament, adding their title to their closet or whatever you want to call it for this year. And then, like I said, Mouse Sports comes to this event, had an impressive run at Gfinity Summer 1, getting those wins against Virtus Pro, even getting a map off of Envy at the time. Obviously, they got kind of crushed by NIP, even though I guess Train was actually a close game, but D2 was just kind of a landslide for NIP. Some of their players have looked great, especially Nex. He's been putting up consistently good numbers. Chris Day's op has really looked actually quite good in a lot of the play I've seen recently, which he's always known to be quite good online, but his LAN play has really begun to match that from what I've seen lately, even before this particular 5, when he still was playing with like Nico and Tabs in that, like the Season 18 ESEA LAN, he looked quite good with the op there too individually. And with this particular 5, they've only played 1 LAN, but he looked quite good next to Nex at that Gfinity Summer event. So those are kind of the 2 big guys. Dennis and Speedy can also play pretty well, and Gabi, pretty solid tactician there. Like I said, we haven't seen much out of them. Kind of a question mark, I guess, because we've only seen that Gfinity event, but they look quite good at it. Can they keep that run of form? To do some predictions really quick, coming out of Group A, C9 plays CLG. I think they win that, move on to the upper bracket. CLG moves to the lower bracket of the group. Then Mouse Sports plays Liquid. I think I'm going to take Mouse Sports here. So it'll be Mouse Sports and Cloud9 playing in the upper bracket for the win out the group to get this top seed. And then it's Liquid plays CLG elimination game. Or one of those 2 teams gets eliminated right there. I think Liquid could beat CLG. So I see them moving on. Cloud9 against Mouse Sports in the upper bracket. That's going to be a tough one. I kind of want to take Cloud9 here, but I wouldn't be surprised if Mouse Sports takes first in the group. So that's kind of a tough map. It would really come down the maps for me to predict that one. So I'm going to hop on the fence on this one and say I'm not really sure. Like I said, depends on maps, but I guess I would give Cloud9 a slight nod. They've been able to beat some really good teams lately, so I think they should be able to handle Mouse Sports this time around. So I'll hop off the fence. I'll say Cloud9 takes first in the group. Mouse Sports and Liquid will get a rematch in the decider game, and I think Mouse Sports will win that again as well. So I'm going to take Cloud9 and Mouse Sports coming out in those respective seedings. With that said, the way Group B will play out, Luminosity takes on Navi. Navi wins that, no problem. VP takes on Tempo Storm. VP wins that, no problem. So those will be your two teams that make it to the final trying to get top seed. Whoever loses that will play the winner of Luminosity and Tempo Storm, which I think should be actually, I have no clue who's going to win that, if I'm honest with you. I mean, I think Luminosity has a bit more experience together as a team, but Tempo Storm does have some decently talented players, at least from what we've seen online. Never seen them play on LAN, so I'm going to be curious to see how, like, Rix and, you know, how well does he play on LAN. Automatic, we know he can play quite well when he played with Nylum coming onto this team. You know, how well can he do? Obviously, Shazam with the op for that team, he's shown us some good games at times for C9, but also had a pretty big run of bad form against top teams on Cloud9 on top of that, though, alongside it. So what kind of Shazam do we get at this event? And like I said, I know Stanislaw could be, you know, a pretty solid, smart player. And then they brought on Roka, who's obviously a pretty decent talent. So I think maybe skill-wise, Tempo Storm might be able to out-edge Luminosity if they can, like, bring their online form to LAN. We'll just have to see. So that'll actually be an interesting game for only an NA scene perspective. It doesn't really have much weight on the tournament because whoever wins that will go on to probably play, like, VP in the decider game. So I would take Navi to take first in the group. And then... VP would just beat him for second seed in the group. So that means that, like, it's Cloud9 versus VP in a semi, because I think Cloud9 takes seed 1 in their group, and then VP takes seed 2 in their group. And then Navi takes seed 1 in their group, and they'll play seed 2, which would be Mouse Sports. So it's like Navi v Mouse Sports and VP v Cloud9. Actually, head-to-head, I feel like VP can beat Cloud9, so unfortunately I think Cloud9 would take, like, 3rd, 4th at this event, unless they get lucky and they either get second seed and they play Navi in a semi, or some upset happens and they get someone else in the semifinal. But I think, you know, maybe they can overcome Navi in a semifinal and make a final. But against VP, they haven't been able to show an ability to beat them. Maybe this can be kind of their new, like, their next big step. Like, they've proven they can beat Navi at times. They've proven they were able to beat Envy before that team died. They have a win against Fnatic now. So, I mean, they're steadily starting to beat teams they couldn't beat before. Maybe now they'll finally push over the edge against Virtus Pro. But I'd actually predicted to go something like Cloud9 losing to VP in a semi if the seeding goes right in the predictions I just had. So they'll take 3rd, 4th, and then VP moves on to the final. Navi beats Mouse Sports, moves on to the final. So we have like a Navi VP final probably, if my seeding guesses are right. And there I would take Navi to win the tournament, VP 2nd, and then Cloud9 and Mouse Sports in 3rd, 4th. That's kind of how I'm seeing it. But maybe, like I said, Cloud9 can finally overcome VP. Maybe I'm wrong on the seeds. They play Navi in a semi instead. We'll just have to see how it goes. That's kind of my predictions, kind of my talk of format. I know I didn't really talk too much about Tempo Storm and LG and CLG. That's just because they're kind of like either new teams going to this event or using a stand in this event, so it's kind of hard to read. But I try to talk over some of the other teams. I try to, you know, talk about predictions and format and all that good stuff. So now I've done my personal part at the beginning. Now I've done my tournament talk at the end, and now I'm pretty much done. So hopefully you'll enjoy this pre-LAN vlog. It'll give you something to think about before the event, and I'm going to cut it now because it has been quite long. So thanks a lot, and see you at the LAN.